Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling something you've probably seen, well, thousands of times, yet it holds one of the biggest illusions in the entire grocery store. I'm talking about the shiny, bold, in-your-face marketing on the front of the package versus the quiet, mathematical reality on the back. You know the buzzwords I'm talking about, right? All natural, light, high protein, multigrain. They sound incredibly healthy, but they often hide the true nutritional story. So let's dive right in and actually turn the package around.
And that brings us to the ultimate question. What are you actually eating? See, when most people turn a package around, they are met with what looks like this terrifying wall of numbers. Calories, fats, percentages, sodium, sugars. It's a lot. And because it looks so complex, a lot of us just, ignore it entirely. We glance at it, get completely overwhelmed, and just trust the marketing on the front instead. But ignoring this panel, that means you're flying blind. Today, we're going to decode that wall of numbers together so you never get tricked by front-of-package marketing again. To make this totally painless, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll see why serving size changes everything. Second, unpacking calories and fats. Third, carbohydrates, sugars, and sodium. Fourth, decoding the percentages. And finally, we'll wrap up with the 30-second label system that you can literally use on your very next grocery run. Let's get started.
Okay. Section 1, serving size changes everything. This is absolutely the critical first step. The very first thing you should look at on a label actually isn't the calories. It's the serving size. And this is just a baseline reflection of what people typically consume. It's not a dietary recommendation for you. Think of it as the foundational anchor for every single number that follows. So imagine you grab a packaged snack. The label says the serving size is 1 cup. And for that 1 cup, there are 250 calories. But let's be real here. You're hungry, so you eat 2 cups. You are no longer eating the amount represented for a single serving. Suddenly, those 250 calories, they become 500 calories. And it's not just the energy. Eating 2 cups means you just doubled your intake of everything. The fat, the sodium, the sugar, the carbs. Literally everything scales based on that serving size. Now, here is where the industry can truly surprise you. And it's with the phrase servings per container. Have you ever bought a beverage that looks like a single-serve bottle? You drink the whole thing, assuming the nutrition facts represent that 1 bottle. But if you look closely at the label, it might actually say 2 servings per container. So the front shows a single drink, but the back is only reporting the sugar and calories for half of it. Before you ever decide if something is low calorie or low sugar, you always have to ask yourself, how much of this package am I actually going to consume? Moving on to Section 2, unpacking calories and fats, the energy and the essentials. So, once you've checked your serving size, you can start looking at the energy and macronutrients you're actually getting. Let's talk about calories first, just as your baseline. Calories are not inherently bad. They just represent the energy you're getting relative to your individual needs, usually based around a general 2,000 calorie reference point. Right below those calories, you'll find total fat, which gets broken down into specific types. Saturated fats are found in things like full-fat dairy and meats, and tracking them is pretty important for cardiovascular health. But the real curveball here is trans fat. Artificial trans fats were historically used to improve a food's texture and shelf life, but they have known adverse health effects. Now, here's a wild fact about FDA labeling. You might see a label claim 0 grams of trans fat, but that doesn't strictly mean absolutely none is present. Thanks to rounding rules for tiny amounts, it can legally be listed as 0 even if trace amounts are still hiding in there. Crazy, right? All right, Section 3, carbohydrates, sugars, and sodium. Let's dig a little deeper into the details. When you're digging into carbohydrates, simply seeing a high carbohydrate tag doesn't really tell you the whole story. High carbs from beneficial dietary fiber, which is naturally found in plant foods and is fantastic for digestion, are usually a brilliant choice. But then we get to sugars, and we have to clarify a totally critical distinction: total sugars versus added sugars. Total sugars include naturally occurring sugars, like the kind you'd naturally find in milk or an apple. Added sugars are exactly what they sound like: sugars introduced during processing, like the syrup coating your cereal or the sweetener in a pasta sauce. People often see 12 grams of sugar and just panic, assuming it's all added. But that's not necessarily true. That's why you absolutely have to look at that added sugars line. To put this in perspective, the FDA actually uses a 50 gram per day limit for added sugars as its daily value reference. So if a single drink has 25 grams of added sugar, you've just hit half your daily limit before you've even had breakfast. Now, looking further down the label, we find this amazing map of essential micronutrients.
This table shows us that the bottom of the box isn't just wasted space or filler. It's actually showing you the tools your body needs to function. Vitamin D for calcium metabolism, calcium for bone health, iron for oxygen transport, potassium for fluid balance. The takeaway here, don't just obsess over the calories. Sometimes the absolute most valuable information is the actual vitamins and minerals you're feeding your biological systems. Section 4, decoding the percentages. Let's make some sense of the math. On the right side of almost every panel, you're going to see a column labeled %DV, which stands for percent daily value. We're shifting away from raw grams and milligrams now to understand vital context. Let me show you why this matters. Ask yourself right now, is 300 milligrams of sodium a lot? If I handed you a snack and told you it had 300 milligrams of sodium, would you know if that's high or low? Raw numbers are incredibly confusing without context. You'd have to sit there and memorize the daily recommended limits for sodium, saturated fat, added sugar, calcium. Nobody has time for that in the grocery aisle. That is exactly why percent daily value exists. It turns those raw numbers into context, showing how much a nutrient contributes to a total daily diet. And actually, it leads us right into an incredible explainer shortcut. Okay, here is the first half of the ultimate rule of thumb, 5%. According to general FDA guidelines, a 5% daily value or less is considered low for any nutrient. So if that snack has 5% DV of sodium, you instantly know, without doing any complex math in your head, that it is relatively low in sodium. If it has 5% DV of dietary fiber, it's relatively low in fiber. Simple as that.
And here is the powerhouse second half of the rule, 20%. A 20% daily value or more means that nutrient is considered high. This is the 5 to 20 rule. 5% or less is low, 20% or more is high. This gives you an instant, incredibly powerful life hack for the grocery aisle. Want a food high in calcium? Just scan for 20% or more. Trying to avoid sodium? Scan for 5% or less. You seriously never need to memorize milligrams again. You just look at the percentages. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the 30-second label system, your grocery store shortcut. So the crucial point is putting all this theory into actual practice. You don't need to spend 5 minutes analyzing every single box you pick up. We're going to combine everything we've just learned into a highly practical, lightning-fast 8-point checklist you can run through before dropping anything into your cart. Ready? First, check the serving size so you know exactly what amount we're talking about. Second, check the calories to gauge the energy. Third, glance at protein and fiber to judge the nutritional value and figure out how full it's going to keep you. Fourth, check for added sugars, especially in snacks and sauces. Fifth and sixth, keep a quick eye on sodium and saturated fat. Seventh, use that magical 5 to 20% rule for the daily value to see what's high or low. And finally, step 8, look at the ingredients list right down below the numbers. And remember this golden rule. Ingredients are listed in descending order by weight, meaning whatever is listed first is what the food is mostly made of. Honestly, once you practice this, stepping through all 8 points takes less than 30 seconds. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want you to remember one key thing. The label is a tool, it's not a test. There isn't one perfectly good label out there. A healthy choice depends entirely on you, your age, your activity level, your medical needs, and your personal dietary goals. For one person, finding a high-protein food is the ultimate goal. For someone else, keeping sodium under control is their top priority. The label isn't there to judge the food. It's just there to give you the information you need to make the absolute best decision for your body. And that leaves us with this final thought. Once you actually learn how to read it, the label stops looking like a confusing wall of numbers. It becomes a map that tells you what you're actually putting into your body. So my question to you is this. The next time you're standing there in the grocery aisle, are you going to fall for the flashy marketing on the front? Or are you going to turn the package around and read the map on the back? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I absolutely can't wait to see you dive into the facts next time you shop.